Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Torah portion this week. We're doing things a little bit differently this week. We're in a studio this week coming to you, and just want to share with some things on the Parsha. Even though we're not doing a live recording this week, I still want to be able to share with you what I feel is the heart of the Father going out in these times right now, which is very important. We need to stay connected. And so I hope and I pray that these messages as they come out, that they challenge you, that they encourage you, they help give you hope, and they help give you something to look forward to. Just a small part of your daily or weekly studies, as we should always be pursuing the heart of the Father above all else. Not just pursuing knowledge, but pursuing Him. And so I hope that this is just a small part in that, making that happen for you. Okay, so this Parsha is Yitro. A lot to be said in this Parsha. I mean, in this Parsha we have the giving of the 10 words, 10 sayings, also called the 10 Commandments, right? And there's a lot to be said about that, but we're really not going to cover that much about that this time on this week. We're going to cover a few other things, okay? So before we go forward, we need to take a little bit of a look back to kind of see what led us up to this point and what caused us to get here, okay? So let's take a look back. First off, we find that Yahweh is preparing the people for what they're about to receive. Yahweh puts us in places and in circumstances to prepare us for what He's about to do in our lives. Otherwise, when what He desires happens, we would not be ready for it. We wouldn't know it. We wouldn't recognize it. Or it might look, wow, that's odd. I don't know what to do with that. And that's what He's trying to avoid. He's trying to show, as we've talked about recently in recent Parsha, trust and fear. See, we need to revere Him and we need to trust Him. And so these two things go together. Okay, they work together in our walk with the Father. So He's trying to develop in this relationship this trust to listen to Him, to do what He says. And just like us today, we're trying to listen to Him, to do what He says. And that's just a part of our life, okay? So He led them through this point, not just while they were in Mitzrayim, not just while they were in Egypt, but yes, when they came out, when they crossed the sea, they got to the other side of the sea, and then what happens? Well, then they're immediately put in another situation. I mean, you would think the situation at the sea would have been enough, right? That would have been, wow, we know to trust Him because He does go before us and He does fight for us. But it's not just fighting for them they were concerned about. See, He wanted Yah to go before them to fight for them, but they wanted Him to care for them, to make sure their needs were taken care of daily. And so again, we're back in this trust scenario. So the question is, will we be bitter of our circumstances, learning to trust Yah, or when He teaches us to walk in His ways, will we receive it in faith? Or we think, okay, now that I'm free, now I can go and I can do whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want, right? Faith doesn't work like that, does it? When you've been set free and you've been redeemed, you have a choice. You can go back and into the ways and the things that enslaved you in the first place. But that's not the desire of Yahweh. That's not the heart of the one that redeemed you. The heart of the one that redeemed you is that we learn to walk in His ways, take Him by the hand, and learn to walk with Him. Okay? So again, just kind of take a quick look back before we can look forward. In Exodus 15, 25 and 26, we find they were at Marah and at the issue of the bitter water. And Moshe, he cried to Yahweh, and Yahweh showed him a log. And we've talked about this recently. He didn't just show him a log, He taught him regarding this tree. And He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. And there Yahweh made for them a statute and a rule. And there He tested them, saying, now listen to this. If you will diligently listen to the voice of Yahweh your God, do what is right in His eyes, give ear to His commandments, and keep all His statutes. I will put none of these diseases on you. I put on the Egyptians, for I am Yahweh your healer. So the key phrase we're looking at here is, and do what is right in His eyes. Interesting, when we come to Him, and He says, I want you to do what is right in my eyes, not do what is right in your own eyes. See, we knew our life up to this point. Those are our circumstances. Those are our life. These are the things we've had to deal with. We knew that. But Yahweh is trying to teach us His ways. He's trying to teach us better ways. So we need to do what is right in His eyes. And if we look at that in the Hebrew, it's really cool. As it says, V'hayashar ba'einav be'aseh. So, what it literally is saying, and you will take shape of, or what is right or straight in his eyes. So you will do what is right or take shape of what is straight in his eyes. And that's what he desires. He says, if you will listen to me, if you will keep my word, if you will do what I am telling you, then you will take shape of what is right in my eyes. See, and then that's learning to walk with him. Okay, so the people come out, and then there's just this joyous time, right? There's people they're celebrating. They come through the sea. They come through these things, and it's just this really awesome time. And they all learn to dwell in peace with one another, and they're just walking to the land, and nothing can stop them, right? Well, I don't think so, because immediately we find that Moshe is sitting there to bring judgments between people as they're trying to go along the way. Now, that's kind of a difficult situation. I mean, they get out and they see these amazing, great, awesome things. You would think that they would put aside some of the strife and the envy, the jealousy, the contention, the fighting, the arguing, the backbiting, all these things. They would put aside all of these things so that they can pursue Yah and what he's asking us to do and to get to the goal, right? No, I don't think so. See, because now that they're seeing all these things are happening, so now they're fighting, they're coming at each other. Okay, so as they're coming at each other, Moshe has to sit and he has to go to the mountain. Now, is this what Moshe was supposed to be doing at the mountain? No. He's supposed to be communing with Yah at the mountain, being an intermediate, someone to go to Yah for the people and to go to the people for Yah, to teach them what he desires in his heart and the things that are pleasing to him. But instead, he's having to sit here and he's having to listen to arguments, listening to people arguing with each other. We're not told what these things are, but we are told that he's having to sit here, he's having to listen to these arguments, and he's having to give them his advice and situations on what to do, what not to do, and solve problems. Now, are they ever going to get to the destination if that's all they're doing? I mean, think about how many people are there. It's a few million people. You get a few million people together, you're bound to have some disagreements. Okay? And if they could have focused on the goal, they could have put some of the disagreements aside and focused on getting to the goal. And that's part of our problem as well. We get caught up in the things that slow us down in reaching the goal, and we set up camp at our arguments and the things that distract us instead of trying to continue to work to the goal. So Exodus 18:16, we find that Moshe is talking to Yitro, his father-in-law, who had come to see him. And it says, when the people have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. Now, again, this is pretty interesting the way this reads. Okay, in the Hebrew, it's ki yihye lahim davar ba elai. Okay, so what he's saying is, and I will make known, or because, and it will be to them the things of God and his laws. Okay, so what we're looking at is the people come to me to inquire of God. So this is interesting. Again, the phrasing of this is really interesting because verse 16, when we look at it, let's say we go back, we look at that in the Hebrew, it says, when they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make to know them statutes laws. So it says, ki yihye lahim davar ba elav. Now, in the Hebrew, the way this reads is when they have a dispute, he comes to me. Not when they have a situation, when they have a dispute, they come to me. It says, when they have a dispute, he comes to me. Well, the question is, who is the he? I believe this is referring to Yah himself. It says, because he is teaching the people what Yahweh desires, his word and his rules, his Torah, and they're teaching him ways of life. So when the people have a dispute to come to him, Yah is teaching them through Moshe his desires and how they should walk and how they should do these things. So he comes to me, and I make what he says known to them. Okay? So in Malachi 2:7, just to reconfirm this, it says, a Kohen's lips should safeguard knowledge, and people should seek what? What is the word there? People should seek Torah from his mouth, because he is the messenger of Adonai Tzavaot. if we are coming to someone to seek advice, if we are coming to someone who is a messenger from the Most High, and or we feel that they're a good teacher, or it's to speak into our life, or whatever the case may be, are they just giving us opinions, or are they trying to give us what the Word says? Are they trying to give us, because it says someone who, in this case, it talks about the Cohen, but their lips should speak Torah. So the lips should speak the word of God, not just our desires or opinions and things that we think, right? Isaiah 8:20 says, "To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them." And again, the Torah, and that's the word, yes, you got it, and Torah, ve lit edah. So the edah is the testimony. And a lot of times when you see the testimony, it refers to the tablets of testimony. Yes, the 10 sayings, the 10 words that appear in this week's Parsha. So again, to the Torah and the testimony, if they do not speak according to this is what we're supposed to be walking according to, right? And I'm continuing with 18:16. It says, "I make them know the statutes of God and his laws." Now again, looking in the Hebrew, it's pretty neat. It says, "Et huki," so that's the Aleph Taf, Hukai, so, and Ha Elohim, the Et Torotaf. So this word, the Aleph Taf Hok, this Hok, it's what we often translate as ordinance, decree, custom, things like that. But the root of this word is Hakach, which means to engrave or to imprint. So what we're looking at here is he says, "I make known to them the decrees or the customs or ordinances of Yahweh so that it will be imprinted on our hearts." Okay? So those are the things that we're looking at. And what is imprinted on our hearts is a pretty big deal. It's an important part of our life. It's the important question that we need to look at, right? Okay. Then next. So if we are engraved, well, and as we come in relationship with him, again, this is something that we need to look at. We are engraved on each other. His word is on our hearts, and our names are on his hands. Again, Isaiah 49:16 says, "Behold, I have engraved." The root there is, again, hakach, engraved you on the palms of my hands, and your words are ever before me. So now we get down to Exodus 18, verse 19. Let's take a quick look at that. It says, "Now obey my voice, and I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God." Okay, we can get into more about this in a minute. You know, is this just advice from a man, advice from a guy? Is this God inspired? Or is this something that man said and Yahweh said, fine? There's a lot to this, and there's a lot of people who are saying that, no, Yitro was a Midianite, once a Midianite, always a Midianite, don't trust anything he says. He was trying to keep the people from, avoiding the people from listening to the voice of Yahweh. See, we only need to listen to Yahweh. Well, here's the problem with that. We still had to listen to Moses. And that does not mean that we have to give ear to everybody who claims to be a teacher, myself included, okay? A teacher or a pastor or whatever the case may be. But that does not exclude the need for leadership within the body, okay? And there's a lot to be said about this, and we'll touch on this again in a minute, okay? But for this point, what we're talking about Yitro and Moshe. He's talking and he says, here's some advice for you, because you're not going to go anywhere doing what you're doing. You're sitting here all the time and you're listening to disputes, you're listening to arguments, you're trying to solve problems, and you're not going anywhere. You cannot go where you say you're supposed to go if all you're doing is sitting here and listening to arguments all day. And I think that's advice that we can take as well. Okay, but let's take a good look at this. In order for Moshe to be near to Yahweh at any given moment, we learn this when we start to get into the Mishkan, the tabernacle, or in the temple. To go and approach, especially into the holy place, you had to be in a state of clean. Okay, so you had to be in a state of ritual cleanness. So in order to maintain the state of ritual cleanness, Moshe had to be extremely careful how he lived daily in the midst of the camp. He had to be very careful in the things he came in contact with, the things that touched him, the things that he touched, the things that did, because at any moment, Yah could have called him to talk to him, and he had to be, in a manner of speaking, he had to be constantly in that state. Okay, and that's a lot to put on someone. Well, if you're here and people are arguing and they're fighting and they're doing all these things all the time and they're coming to you all the time, what do you think the circumstances could be? I mean, possibly that one of these people would have been unclean and they would have infected, if you will, Moses. And then Yahweh, he has to go to Yahweh to figure out how to solve the situation, and he's unclean. So now he has to go through a mikveh, he has to do all the, okay, so you kind of get the point there, all right? So what we're talking about is this. If he was in contact with these people, it's possible he could have been rendered unclean and not able to go into the presence of Yah when he needed to receive instruction or when he needed to inquire of Yahweh. And one of the things we learn in this is, we say we want to be so close to the presence of Yahweh, but the thing is, the closer you are, the more responsibility you have, the more accountability you need. So again, the same thing with the tabernacle, same thing with the temple. To those who were closest to the holy place, there was more of a demand put on their daily lives and how they lived than just the people who were in the camp. So there's a lot to learn from that. Here's a couple of things. Luke 12:48 says, "Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom much they entrusted much, they will demand more. So to whom much is given, much is required." Leviticus 10:3, Moshe says to Aaron, "This is what Yahweh has said, among those who are near me, I will be sanctified, and before all the people I will be glorified." And Aaron held his peace. Again, what we're saying, and when Nadav and Avihu tried to go into the presence of Yah to do something that was not their responsibility, and they tried to do that, and they encroached upon a holy thing, and they became no more, okay? And Yahweh is saying, to those who are closest to me, I will be sanctified. In other words, those who are closer to me are held to a higher standard of responsibility to the holy things and how they carry them out. Okay? Numbers 8:19 says, "I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and his sons from among the people of Israel to do the service for the people of Israel at the tent of meeting and to make atonement for the people of Israel, that there may be no plague among the people of Israel when the people of Israel come near the sanctuary." So again, the Levites were given a place of responsibility to do certain things, uphold certain things, and when they were serving, there were things they could not do in the camp. Okay, and what we learn later in the scripture, the Levites often served in a rotation, so that when they were working in the temple, here's an example, they pretty much stayed up on that area until their time for service there was done. Then they would go back home, and then they would have continuing duties there. But again, now they're not serving in the temple at this time. Okay, so again, if you're closer to the presence of Yah, there's much put on you. Okay, there's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. And Solomon, the wisest of all, he talks about gaining wisdom, gaining knowledge, gaining understanding. And you think, wow, if I just had all this knowledge, this would be an awesome thing, right? Well, what Solomon said about it is the more knowledge you gain, there's much grief and much sorrow that comes with it. Ecclesiastes 1:18 says, "For in much wisdom is much grief. For the more knowledge, the more suffering." Wow, there's a lot in that. Okay, so what Yitro was telling Moshe is what you need to do is you need to continue to go to Yah for the people, but you also need to continue to teach people what they're supposed to know. But what he was saying was that there are those that he would pull out from among the people that he would teach a little more, a little closer, and have a little more to do with, and then they, in turn, would help give instruction to the rest of the people. Now, this somewhat follows the same thing that Yah had spoken to Moshe at the burning bush, when Moshe did not want to speak on behalf of Yahweh, and he said, okay, well, Aaron's coming, Aaron can speak for you. Okay, and when we find out that when they were in Mitzrayim and they went before Pharaoh, most of the time, Aaron is the one that did the majority of the speaking. Okay, and that began to change over time, but that's the way it happened. And then we also find things throughout the scripture, like Moshe spoke to Aaron. Yahweh said to Moshe, "Tell Aaron," and Yahweh told Moshe to tell Aaron and his sons, or to tell Aaron and his sons and the people of Israel. So again, there's this. We see somewhat of this structure being established and being used from this point forward. But the basis of it all was they had to learn what Yahweh's ways were. They had to learn what righteousness was. They had to learn the heart of the Father, because these people did not have the same relationship with Yahweh that Moshe did. Moshe spent time with him. He had the burning bush experience. He spent time at the mountain. He did, whereas a lot of these other people, they did not. Okay. Exodus 18:20, it says to disciple and train up is the implication that's being given here. He needs to select men, and again, the selection is pretty interesting, but he needs to select men, and he needs to disciple them and train them up. How? He says, teach them God's decrees. Again, et hahukim, there's that word hok again. Give them his instructions, the et hatorot. And again, that's the word Torah, to give them his Torah, and show them how to conduct their lives. That is et haderech. Derech is way, or how to live their life. And so what he says, so you continue to go to Yah for the people, and you teach people these basics, because this is what they're going to need above everything else. So you teach them these basic things. Then he says, verse 21, moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe. Replace such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So he says to look for. The word there also means to discern. Okay, the word there, it's ve'etah, and the word for look for or discern is tihezeh. Tihezeh. And the word is tihezeh, which means to see or to perceive, even envision what is not seen. We see this root word also used again in Job. Job 34:32 says, teach me what I do not see. Ehezeh. Okay, so this is the same type of a thing. Teach me what I do not see. So this is the kind of thing that Moshe was supposed to do. He was supposed to see what the normal eyes couldn't see. He was supposed to discern people who would be leaders and to fit righteous qualifications. Now, notice when Yitro came to Moshe, he did not say, you should select men who you trust, or you select men that you think could do a good job, or select men that have a great resume. That's not what he said. He said you need to discern men who are like this. All right? So what we find is this. The word shows Moshe establishing order and authority before the Torah was written, before Sinai. Okay? So without that, we cannot properly interpret the word that is about to be given. I mean, we even saw this when Nehemiah and Ezra, right, the great assembly. So we find that all the people gathered, and the word was read, and there were people, Levites, there were people who were in among the people to, as they heard the reading, to explain what was being said. And this was a good thing, because then when the people heard it, they what do we do? And so then there were people there that they could help explain or interpret what was being said, so that the people could pursue the right thing. Okay. Some have said that this model of setting up judges for Israel was birthed out of pagan religious systems and government systems, all of this. Okay, because of this, we should avoid Yitro's advice, which is the advice from the mind of man. I've even heard it compared to advice from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so that the goal of here, this Midianite Yitro, his goal was to get people to not listen to Yahweh. Well, okay, but think about this for a minute. He's like, no, because Yah, brought the people to this mountain so that he could speak to them. And Yitro is saying, don't listen to Yahweh. No, see, he never said that. Okay, what he said was, Yahweh, Moshe, you teach these men who are reputable, righteous men that you have discerned, you teach them Yah's heart, his ways, and then follow through. That way you can continue, they can continue, and the whole camp can go on further. So this whole system of setting up judges is pagan? Well, okay, well then let's take a look a little further down. Deuteronomy 16:18 says, you shall appoint judges and officers in all your towns that Yahweh your God is giving you according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. So who were appointed, and what were the qualifications? If Moshe was supposed to prophetically perceive who were to be judges, this would not be a contradiction. We see a lot of places where Yahweh chooses people to walk to work through men, to work through people. These men were chosen, and they were to be taught by and submitted to Yahweh. If these are the ones that were submitted as they came out and at the mountain, when they go and there's to be separated by tribe, because when they came out, then they had to organize by tribes. So as they came out, would we end up with one tribe that doesn't have any leaders? I don't think so. Okay, I believe that if the right ones were chosen, then when the tribes were set in their order, that would be there as well. Okay, what we're talking about is unity, and unity needs leadership. Now, here's the problem. A lot of people have made a lot of mistakes. A lot of people have hurt a lot of people. But we've got to face the fact that it does not change the fact that Yahweh desires for there to be shepherds among his people. And yes, Yeshua is our great shepherd, and we all need to follow him. We all need to listen to him. But we all need to learn to work together in that process. Okay? If we work in different parts of the body of Messiah, and we all work together in our collective parts, it'll be a wonderful whole. But if we're not willing to do that, someone has to lead certain parts. And the other parts have to work to make it all happen. Okay? We need unity. And for unity, we need leadership. Because you cannot have unity without some form of leadership. Without it, everyone will, as it says in the scripture, do what is right in their own eyes. And every time they did what was right in their own eyes, it never said that was a good thing. We need to have common goals. We need to be seeking the word of Yahweh. Learning that, here's a tough one, what I think is not always as important as what I do with what I think. Do you catch that? What I think is not always as important as what I do with what I think. We can have opposing opinions. It doesn't mean we can't walk together. We can have differences of ideas. It doesn't mean you're not my brother. Okay, we've got to learn to work towards common goals. All right, and just because something isn't done the way that I think it should be done does not necessarily mean that it's completely wrong. You know, we need to learn to dwell within the community of believers while looking out for one another. Okay, now we do see that there were leaders among Israel. Here's a few examples. Exodus 3:16 says, "Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them." So we find in Mitzrayim, when Moshe went to the people, there were elders that were already there in the midst of the camp. Problem is, they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, and apparently there wasn't enough of them. Okay. Exodus 18:12, again, same thing. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. And he was with Moshe, so it's not saying Moshe wasn't there, but Aaron and the elders, they all came, and they all partook of this offering that was given to Yah. Exodus 24:1, he says to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you, Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, and the 70 elders of Israel, and worship from afar." Again, there had to have been the 70 elders in Israel for them to do this. Deuteronomy 27:1. So now Moses and the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, "Keep the whole commandment that I command you today." Again, Moses and the elders of Israel commanded the people. The scenario I see here is somewhat to, again, what I referenced, Nehemiah, Ezra, when the Torah was being read in the midst of all the people, and there were people that were there as well to help explain what was being said. Numbers 27:15. Moshe spoke to Yahweh, saying, "Let Yahweh, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation who shall go out before them and come in before them, who shall lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of Yahweh may not be as sheep that have no shepherd." We find in Matthew 9:36, speaking of Yeshua, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, for they were harassed and helpless, like what? Sheep without a shepherd. That was not the desire. He had compassion on them because they were not walking as they should. They did not have what they needed. And because of it, they weren't following in a way that they were supposed to. Jeremiah 3:15 says, "And I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding." Again, I will give you shepherds after my own heart who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. So again, Yahweh is saying, just because there are shepherds, there are plenty of places where he says, "Woe to the shepherds and that they're not good shepherds." Okay, they're not showing the heart of the Father. They're not teaching the people his ways. They're not doing these things, and Yahweh says, "Woe to those shepherds." Okay? But he says, I will give you shepherds after my own heart. Exodus 19. So on the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day, they came into the wilderness of Sinai. And they set out from Rephidim, and they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness, and there Israel encamped before the mountain. Both of these things, this is different variations of the phrase Hana, which means to encamp or to incline, or this is they set up camp. This is what we find Yaakov Machanaim. There were two camps that he came across. Same words that are given there. But an interesting thought about this. Verse 2, the word camped is given twice. The first instance says that Yisrael camped, the Yachanu, which is the plural, suggesting they camped in a sporadic fashion, here, there, everywhere, whatever, without an order. But when they camped at Sinai, the word they camped is Vayichan, which suggests they were camped as one, organized, properly aligned, camping as one man, perhaps as by tribal identity. Preparing ourselves to become a covenant people of Israel means putting our lives into order, living by design, not by default, and learning who we are and where we belong. That is a quote by Barry Phillips from House of David in Virginia. So Exodus 19:4-6 tells us our identity and purpose. A few things we need to take a look at. Because if we don't identify with the God of Israel, we won't listen to his ways. If we don't identify as a people who are redeemed, who we are a part of Israel, then we won't see the word for us as that. Well, we're missing out on covenant. Okay? So identity and purpose is what we're looking at. Because if we have our identity, we know to whom we belong, then we have a purpose because he gave us that. So Exodus 19:4 says, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings, and I brought you to myself. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice, keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you shall speak to the people of Israel. Identity, you are his. We are sheep. Yeshua says, my sheep hear my voice. When Israel was at the mountain, it was the sheep camping at the feet of the shepherd, preparing to listen to his voice. And the phrase, hear my voice, means be obedient. Okay, hear my voice means obey my word. Exodus 19:5 says, if you will obey me and keep my covenant, tishme'u b'koli, it's the same thing that would be given here in John chapter 10, verse 26. Did you believe in that? Because you are not my sheep, as I said to you, verse 27, my sheep hear my voice. Again, hear my voice means obey my word. It says, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give to them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them from my hand. Okay, so the people have to prepare. Yahweh is getting ready to speak to the people, and you think this is great, this is what they wanted, right? Not necessarily, because they don't know what they're asking for yet. They want to hear the voice of God, but they don't know what it's going to take when that happens. When they hear the voice of God, they're going to have to die to themselves. When they hear the voice of God, there are things that they're going to have to put aside. And there are things that they're going to have to pursue. And they're going to have to shema what he says. Okay? There's a process in hearing the voice of God. And there's danger in hearing the voice of God. There's a few things we need to get ready for. Okay? So the people have to prepare because Yahweh is going to speak directly to them. People need to be careful in preparing to meet or hear from Yahweh directly. If we hear the voice of Yahweh, we might think we are accountable only to him. You hear people like this today, right? I'm only accountable to God. The problem is, well, God hasn't said anything, so I guess I'm doing great. And they may not be so. Okay, it means we're not willing to listen or work with anybody else because, well, God speaks to me. Here's the thing. When Yah spoke at the mountain, every single person, every individual in that camp heard the voice of God. But not every person in that camp was supposed to walk in Moses' position. Not every person in that camp was supposed to be a high priest. Not every person in the camp was supposed to be a Levite. But every person heard the voice of God. Okay, they all had their place within the body, but they all heard the voice. And they have to learn to work together because of that. Okay, if we're not willing to hear anyone's other voice or help from anyone else, that is what's called as prophet syndrome, which is a person who believes they hear from God and thereby are exempted from submission to authority even when authority is God ordained. It doesn't shall say all authority is given by God, whether you agree with it or not. Authority is there. Okay. Another problem would be this. I answer only to Moshe, because Moshe was the only one who spoke directly to Yahweh, so no one compares to the revelation he had. Therefore, even the rest of the Tanakh is flawed. I only listen to the first 5 books. I only listen to Moshe. Well, what's the problem in that? There's other things there that can help us for our life and help us in living that is good for us. By saying I answer only to Moshe or just the Torah, I really mean my interpretations of it. What we're saying is, I only listen to the Torah or what I think it has to say. I only listen to Moses. Well, when a brother comes to us and says, look, I think that, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I don't care what you have to say. I only listen to Moses. See the problem with there? I mean, it's prideful, it's arrogant, and it really doesn't help to reach the goal. We are to work together with the Torah, which is the word that we were given, and the leaders that were appointed to keep authority in the word, so that we will walk in the authority of the word. When the soldier came to Yeshua and he says, all you have to do is speak the word, my servant will be healed. He said, I understand this because I'm a man who has authority because I am under authority. If we walk in authority, if we walk in our own authority, we won't get very far. Even this, Yeshua says, he who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives the one who sent me. Do we come on our own authority, or do we come on the authority of the one who sent us? And again, there's things we have to be careful of in there. Boundaries are set up in there too. So was the word that was given of Yahweh, was the word given to the Jews only? Because I've heard that. Now, the word that was given was only given to the Jewish people, right? Many people today believe that a Jew is obligated to keep the Torah, but a non-Jew could decide to keep it or not. I can't say I agree with that, because I don't see where Yahweh will give his word he redeems the people, brings them out, gives them covenant, and says, this is my words of life for you to continue to walk in my covenant, walk in my ways. I want this to be done everlasting, and then say, well, this isn't working. I need to come up with some other group of people with some other different way of doing things. And fully expecting these people to work well together and play nice. I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me. Okay? The scripture says he does not change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Okay? So the question here I have is, once you've been brought near, are you still considered a stranger or a foreigner? Once you've been brought near to Yahweh, are you still a stranger or a foreigner? I mean, Ephesians 2 says you used to be Gentiles. You used to be without covenant, without promise. You used to be estranged from covenant, estranged from the commonwealth of Israel. But now in the Messiah, you who are far away are now brought near. So once we are redeemed, again, Romans 11, grafted in, right? Once we are brought near, we need to understand we are a part of a people called Israel, not replacing anybody at all, but joining with a people called Israel to be established as a people set apart for the Most High. So Exodus 19, verse 8. So all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken, we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to Yahweh. So this is not just I will do, but we will do. This is a very important fact. It says all the words that Yahweh has spoken, we will do. In other words, we're not just saying I will do, not exempting myself from that, but is we, singular or plural? You see where I'm going with this? We say we will do, we are implying that we will walk together to get it done. We will walk together in his ways to be established as a covenant-keeping people. We set a live-apart life as part of a greater collective. And here's the truth. There is no way that one individual person can keep all Yahweh's commanded. How many of you have heard? There's no way anybody can keep all those commandments. And you know what? They're right. You know why? Some were given to women. Some were given to men. Some were given to Aaron, the high priest. Some were given to the sons of Aaron. Some were given to the Levites. Some were given so again, there are different groupings within all that Yah has said. So one person cannot keep them all. We can only keep the word of God if we are willing to do it together as part of a collective, as part of a body. And when all of us come together, when his restoration comes and brings us all back in together, we can only keep his word together as one as a body. Okay, and it's again showing the importance of needing to be one. So the question is, do we fully and wholeheartedly desire to walk with Yah and in his ways? Psalm 78:35 through 38 says, remembering God was their rock, El Elyon their redeemer. But they tried to deceive him with their words. They lied to him with their tongues. For their hearts were not right with him, and they were unfaithful to his covenant. Yet he, because he is full of compassion, forgave their sin and did not destroy. Many times he turned away his anger and he didn't rouse his wrath. What he's saying is that many times the people, they said they would do what God said, but they didn't do it. Well, how many times have we done the same? How many times has Israel done the same throughout their history? We say we're going to do it, but we don't. We're going to walk in his ways, but we don't. You know, but again, God is faithful and he is merciful. He is compassionate, right? So, where did Yahweh give instruction, and to whom was instruction given to? Exodus 19:20. So Adonai came down onto Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and Adonai called to Moshe to the top of the mountain, and Moshe went up. So a question we have is, why Sinai and not while they were already in Israel? Why didn't he just bring them right to the land and then give them his promises, his word, and all this stuff in the land? That way he could just say, so this land that I have brought you to, see that over there? Well, that's this. See that over there? That's this. No, he was telling them when you get to the land and all these things. So he was preparing them so that when they went into the land, they already knew what was to be there. It's not like, okay, now let's get you into the land and now let's see if you can wing it until we learn it. No. See, we were given it so that we could learn to walk in it, so when we get there, we can be walking in it. But interesting thought by that's based out of Talchut Shmoni in Yitro, paragraph 275. It says, the reason why the Torah was not given to the people in the land of Israel was so as not to give us a pretext to claim that since this law was given in the land of Israel, the Gentiles had no share in it. Ooh. So, according to this, it's saying that the Torah was given outside of the land of Israel so that all nations could come and have a part in it if they were so willing. That's awesome, isn't it? So we no longer have to be born Israel to be able to come in and have a place of covenant with Israel. And isn't this what Yahweh promised to Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov? This culmination of Sinai, all these things that have brought them to this point, has been a fulfillment of the promise of a covenant that Yahweh gave to Avraham, and still exists even today. And this words of life is not given just to the Jewish people, and even so, the tribe Judah was one of 12, but it wasn't just given to the tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel right there, but all who would be willing to be joined and brought in with. See, to keep his commandments? Can we say, no, the Torah is given to the Jews and everybody else, no, you can do whatever you want and God will accept you, don't worry about it, it'll all work out. See, don't do that. Solomon, what does Solomon have to say about it? Ecclesiastes 12:13 says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of who? This is the whole duty of man. He didn't say this is the whole duty of the Jewish people. No, this is the whole duty of man, to walk in his ways, keep covenant, keep his commandments. Okay? Exodus 20, verse 1. So God spoke all these words, saying. Now this is interesting. It seems kind of redundant if you look at it, but this is showing organization and preparedness. Okay, and we can learn from this, because it says, Vaidaber, so that's and these things, or speak, things, matters, Elohim, et kol, okay, so Elohim is God, and et, aleph taf, kol, each or all, hadvarim, these things, ha'ele le'emor, okay, these things are these words, and said, or saying. So again, Vaidaber, said, hadvarim, said, le'emor, said. What's going on here? Okay, it seems pretty redundant, and so how would it be given this way? And here's one of the ways that this is understood. That Yahweh brought his words together, fashioned them, formed them into a thought that we could comprehend, understand, and he spoke them to us. His ways are definitely higher than our ways, and if he were just to speak everything out there, we would not be able to understand it all. But he assembled his words, brought them together in a way we could understand, then gave them to us so that we could understand, and he spoke to them. And what we can learn from this, anyone who was speaking to people, especially teachers, need to be prepared to do so. This is showing organization and preparedness. He organized things, he even organized the people, and then he spoke to them. James 3:1 says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness." You must be prepared to teach or to speak in front of people. If not, understand, you're going to be held accountable for the things that you say. I am going to be held accountable for the things that I'm saying, even in this recording. Okay? And at times, honestly, that scares me. But nonetheless, it's true that we are each held accountable for our words. But even more so when you stand up in front of people or give words out there where other people can hear and receive, and possibly receive it as instruction or teaching for them to learn and to walk in. Those who teach are going to be held to a stricter place. Okay, they have a lot more responsibility that are given there. Even a public reading of the Torah. There's a story about Rabbi Akiva, how he was called up for an aliyah, and he politely refused it. And later, when his disciples came to him, and his students came to him and said, "Why would you not go read? Go up and read from the Torah? That's an honor." He said, "Because I was not prepared. I had not read that portion 2 or 3 times at least prior." And he said, "For me to go up there and to, I'm going to paraphrase this, for me to go up there and just try to wing it, or is disrespectful not only to my king, but to his people." So, those who teach have to be prepared to do so and have a greater responsibility in doing so. 1 Corinthians 4:15. "For even if you have 10,000 trainers in connection with the Messiah, you do not have many fathers. For in connection with Messiah Yeshua, it was I who became your father by means of the good news. Therefore, I urge you to imitate me. This is why I have sent you Timothy, my beloved and trustworthy child in the Lord. He will remind you of the way of life I follow in union with Messiah Yeshua and teach you everywhere in every congregation." So if we are a people that are set apart, then we need to be accountable to what is being revealed to us. In order to have these things that are accountable to being revealed to us, we need to be around people to help hold us accountable to the things that are being revealed to us. We need to learn to walk together. We need to learn to walk as a body, and we need to learn to walk in the things that have been revealed. Things that have yet to be revealed, we don't know what they are. We're ignorant of these things. But the things that have been revealed to us is our responsibility, according to Deuteronomy 29:29. The things that are yet to be revealed belong to Yahweh, but the things that have been revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do the words of this Torah. We may do the words of this law. So let's learn together to walk in his ways. When you go back and you read this parsha, go back and read the 10 sayings, the 10 words. And as you read them, think about, how can I apply this to my life today, and what does this mean for me? And if you want another interesting thing to look, you can find these 10 words, these 10 sayings are throughout the Torah. Maybe not word for word, but in their principles, they are words of life, so you can find them throughout as instruction throughout the entire word. Okay, so let's learn to walk in his word, learn to walk in his ways, learn to receive from his heart, but let's learn to do it together. Okay, and let's learn to walk as a body of Messiah, learn to walk as a body of a people called Israel, learn to grab hands with one another, and to help in this restoration of all things. All right, so thanks for sticking in with me, and I hope this has blessed you and challenged you. Keep watching. We also love your feedback at times. We hear from you and these teachings and how they've been a blessing to you. And I thank you for that. And I just pray that the Lord continue to bless you.